Welcome to the PT on Ice podcast. My name is Dr. Jeff Musgrave, Doctor of Physical Therapy. Welcome to the Daily Show. So today is Wednesday. That means it's Jerry on Ice. We're going to be discussing what's in a name: AMRAP, EMOM, and rounds for time. Before we get into that, if you're looking to up your Jerry game in 2023, you've got lots of opportunities. So next cohort of Essential Foundations is going to be on April 26th. And we're going to have Advanced Concepts kicking back up in May on the 4th. And then we've got 2 live courses this weekend that still have some spots. You can go see the crew live at Onward Philly or Baton Rouge this weekend. So lots of opportunities in 2023. If you're in the area, they still have some seats left. Make sure to drop in and hang out for the weekend. Live courses are so much fun. We love getting to bring this content to you live and work on hands-on skills. So a little bit of background on why we're talking about this. So really commonly in our courses, especially in geriatrics, we're working with older adults. When we get into these programming lectures, there's lots of new content. So unfortunately for a lot of us, whether you went to PT, PTA school, OT, OTA school, when it gets to programming and designing workout structures, we get almost no information about how to do this, how to set up a session successfully, how to make it efficient for the patient, how to keep it organized, how to progress it, and just like make life a little bit easier. So going to spend a little bit of time of talking about how to use AMRAPs for your clients, how to use EMOMs, 2 different types of EMOMs, whether you're going to define reps or if you're going to determine a time frame, or if you're going to use something like rounds for time, kind of who these are good for, who they're maybe not the best for. So first one we're going to get into is the AMRAP. As many rounds as possible. In this case, we're not going to talk about the AMRAP strength set. That would be a whole nother topic around finding an estimated 1 rep max, which is very important, but we're going to be focusing on AMRAPs in the scenario of creating a workout. So let's say we've got 3 movements we're going to use for a client. I'm going to use the same example for all of these different workout structures. So the first one, we're going to say it's a 9-minute AMRAP. We'll say it's 6 deadlifts, 9 push-ups, and then 12 mountain climbers, okay? So the things that are being held constant when we're talking about an AMRAP for a workout is the reps per set are defined and the total work time is defined, right? Because you're going to ride that ride as many times as you can in 9 minutes. How many reps you have to do before you move on to the next thing, that has been determined. But the variables are the speed. How quickly can your client get through those movements and effort? So for some clients, people that are not highly motivated to work hard, they're like, hey, I can just phone this in for 9 minutes and it doesn't matter. The clock's coming to save me in the end. Those are not great people to use an AMRAP for. But those people that have a competitive edge, and maybe you can set a goal for them. You can say, hey, my goal is in this 9-minute AMRAPs, I want at least 5 rounds. I want 5 complete rounds and as many reps as you can give me in this 9 minutes. So when we're thinking through this scenario, people that this is not good for, designing an AMRAP for someone who is very competitive and has symptoms that are bound to volume, where maybe this volume, if they get through 5 rounds, we may be looking at exacerbated symptoms if they hit that volume, because you have no control over the total volume. You've got the reps that they're going to do set and when they move on, but how much total volume they do, you're not controlling here if you set up a workout for an AMRAP. So those people that are super competitive and highly irritable with their symptoms based on volume, AMRAPs may not be the way to go. So that's the basics of an AMRAP, 9 minutes. They just go through those movements as many times as they can in that order. So client effort and the speed are the things that are variable. So you can't control the volume there, only the duration of time and the order of the movements. So then we go into probably one of the most popular structures to use is an EMOM. every minute on the minute. So if we're looking at that same example we just used for the AMRAP, and we're going to design a 9-minute EMOM, we've got 6 deadlifts that we're going to do in minute 1. So once you complete your 6 deadlifts, the rest of that time is rest. And then minute 2 would be 9 push-ups. The rest of that time is rest. And then 12 mountain climbers. So same 3 movements, but you've got a complete movement, or a movement each minute. You've got that full minute. The remaining time is your rest. Things you want to keep in mind here: transition time. If I've got an older adult client that I know it takes them 20 seconds to go from deadlifts into position for their push-ups, say it's on the floor, we need to factor that in for something like an EMOM, every minute on the minute. I would say in general, as long as you have some idea of your client, what they can do in a minute, these are great for everybody. An EMOM is great. Mitch Babcock is famous for coining the term REMOM, rehab every minute on the minute, because these are really commonly used in rehab, really helpful. You can also adjust these very easily. So you realize, oh man, I totally overdosed those push-ups. They can't get 9 push-ups in and the transition into the floor from the deadlifts. Maybe we cut the push-ups to something they can do in 1 set if they're having to break that up, and then we get some time back. So EMOMs, when you define the reps, it would be like 6 deadlifts in minute 1, 9 push-ups in minute 2. Minute 3 would be 12 mountain climbers. Great way to do that. You've got control in this scenario over the total volume. If you've got a minimum threshold you're trying to hit on volume, you got it. You control the pacing here. So the pacing is variable in an AMRAP. It is not in an EMOM. In an EMOM, you help them pace that out. They have some control out of how hard they do those reps, but some people that don't understand their pace for these movements, this can be really helpful because you can teach them pacing through this. So in general, EMOMs, easy to adjust, really good for basically everyone. You've controlled that time, you've controlled the effort, you've controlled the volume. So if you're worried about irritability with volume, symptoms that are driven by volume, this can be really helpful structure. Another one that's a little bit different, but still very interesting and very helpful, is to do an EMOM, but you set it up on an interval timer. So during that minute, you're defining the movement that you want, and the client is determining how many reps they complete during a set work rest period. So a really easy one to do is like 40 seconds of work, 20 seconds off. So if we're going to use that same example, we'll do a 9-minute EMOM. First movement will be deadlifts. We're going to set the work for 40 seconds. We'll do 40 seconds of deadlifts. When that time goes off, regardless of how many reps, they get 20 seconds of rest and or transition time to get ready for those push-ups. So minute 2 then would be push-ups, 40 seconds of push-ups, 20 seconds of rest. And then the third movement, mountain climbers, 40 seconds of mountain climbers, 20 seconds of rest and or transition to the deadlifts. And you're just going through that 3 times. So here you have given them the total effort time that you want and how much rest and transition time is controlled for them, but you've given away your ability to control the reps. So some caveats here to think about is you've given up volume again. So someone who is, their symptoms are driven by volume, total volume of movements, this may not be a good way to go unless you really know your client. If you know your client well and know how many reps of deadlifts they're going to get in 40 seconds, then that's fine. You can still control the volume. But for most of us with new clients, if we're worried about total volume driving symptoms, this is not a good way to go. I see this structure being a lot better for cardio driven interventions where you're trying to get the heart rate up and control that work rest period. And that's going to drive your cardiovascular adaptation. That's really what you're looking for. These can also be helpful as like shakeouts or during deload weeks where maybe we're going to give someone a really lightweight for those deadlifts, an easier version of the push-up than normal, an easier version of the mountain climber where maybe it's elevated in a plank position up on a countertop when they usually do it in the floor. So we're purposefully making the movement much easier because the volume is going to be variable. It's going to be a very high volume workout when we do that EMOM and then set the work rest clock to 40-20. This is very similar to doing like a Tabata set, which is really commonly used structure. A lot of us have done that type of exercise. It's very similar, but Tabatas are set up 20 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest. So instead of every minute being a different movement, you can set that up to be a different movement every 30 seconds. So you're thinking about kind of 30-second blocks of time. But the movement is changing every 30 seconds. Sometimes you can use the same one. You could do a bike Tabata where you're doing the same thing. But if you're trying to get variety and move between movements, just be mindful that 10 seconds is not a whole lot of time to rest or transition. So you got to be really mindful about what order your movements are. If you want that client to be getting up and down off the ground several times during the session, how much effort that takes, how much time that takes. So really want to be mindful. Like in this structure, we're talking about deadlift, push-up, mountain climber. If someone's going to use an elevated surface like a big box or a countertop for push-ups and mountain climbers, this is great. But if we change this deadlift, push-up, mountain climber structure and we did push-ups on the floor and then we did deadlifts, they've got to get up, and then mountain climbers, they've got to get down in the floor again. So we're forcing those floor transfers. And we may want that. And if those are easy for clients, but just little subtle things to think about with the structure here. So that's AMRAPs, that's EMOMs based on reps, EMOMs based on time, and a little bit about Tabatas. So now we go into rounds for time. So rounds for time can be really helpful for someone who is motivated to get done quickly. So what we're doing here is we're defining the total volume. So we're controlling volume here. We're saying 6 deadlifts, 9 push-ups, 12 mountain climbers. And we're going to say, I want you to do 3 rounds as quickly as possible. Sweet. So the client is control of pacing and they're motivated by the time frame. The sooner you get through these movements, the sooner you're done. So something to keep in mind here is we've given away our ability to control how long this is going to take. If it's a busy schedule, a busy, heavily scheduled day, it's a new client, I do not recommend rounds for time. This can go sideways really quick, especially with someone who doesn't know how to pace themselves, or you can't predict how pacing is going to go for them. So just bear in mind, you've controlled the volume, but the speed and pacing are out the window. So someone comes in really hot on the first round and a half and their hands and knees gasping, struggling, doing 1 rep at a time. This workout that maybe you controlled in the EMOM format, you know, I only need a 9-minute block once I start the clock. You do rounds for time and someone paces this poorly, it could take 12 or 15 minutes if they come out real hot and start failing reps, or they can't complete these movements, or you need to be ready to scale those movements and make them easier. So maybe instead of push-ups on the ground, we're going to have to move those up on the box because this has taken way longer than we intended. So once you know your client well and those clients that they have a competitive nature, set a goal for them. Say, hey, 3 rounds for time. I want to see if you can get this done in 8 minutes or less. Anything less than 8 minutes, that's icing on the cake. That's a big high five. That's a gold star for the day. Those people can be super motivated by just going faster, getting this done very quickly. So the people that I would avoid it for, people that don't know how to pace themselves, you don't have time to waste. So if this could take extra time, that could be bad news for your schedule for that day. So be cautious for rounds for time. And when I'm working with clients or I'm giving homework for people, those people that like to be competitive, they like that. Sometimes I'll give that to them in their homework, especially people that it's like they don't want to spend a whole lot of time, but we can force that intensity because they're competitive. And then if they mess up their timing at home, that's on them. That's not on my clock time in the clinic. So I don't use those a ton in the clinic until I know clients pretty well, but use that a ton for homework. And the cool thing about all of these structures is you can get a little bit different stimulus based on which structure you use in the same workout. If all this stuff is brand new for you, I would highly recommend to try these different formats together. Maybe even the workout that I outlined here. 3 rounds for time of 6 deadlifts, 9 push-ups, 12 mountain climbers. And then maybe another day you do it as a Tabata, 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off, go through 3 rounds. Or you define the reps and then feel what that rest feels like when you do 6 deadlifts and you've got the rest of that time to get ready for push-ups. Or you could do this once again, try it on yourself on another day. 9-minute AMRAP, 6 deadlifts, 9 push-ups, 12 mountain climbers. So lots of ways to look at this structure. If you're unfamiliar with this, practice it yourself. That's the best way to really get a feeling for this. I would primarily stick with AMRAPs and EMOMs. If all of this stuff is brand new for you, try it yourself and then try it with some clients. But the big pro tip here, get ready to adjust things. Regardless of how long you've used these structures, maybe you've used these for yourself for personal exercise. When you're switching over to doing this with clients, you need to make sure that you really understand how to adjust these on the fly. Do I add some reps? Do I need to change a scaling option for someone to make it a little bit easier or make it harder? Maybe they do their 6 deadlifts in 12 seconds and they're standing around. There's no intensity. Heart rate's dropping back down, too much rest. Are we going to add weight? Are we going to add some reps? Just be ready to adjust everything at any point. The more comfortable you are with that, the more successful you're going to be. So that's one thing. The second thing is it may seem like it's going to take you extra time to set up these formats and think through it. But the reality is you dial this in the first session or two, and then you may not have to change your documentation for the rest of a bout of care. You may do this same EMOM and add weight to your deadlifts. You may change the push-up position. You may change the position for the mountain climber. This would be very minimal changes to your documentation. It's very efficient. You've controlled time because unlikely you're going to get double the amount of time with the client magically in a session. So if you're controlling time, you can change the scalability and the volume. There's so many things you can control to change the stimulus once you've determined a structure that's good for someone. All right, team. I know that was probably kind of a lot. I love nerding out on this stuff. So if you have questions, thoughts, I would love to hear them. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. That is it for now. Have a great day, team.